NFL Live, where we've got updates on some key wide receivers. George Pickens of the Cowboys expected to get the franchise tag before the March 3rd deadline. That'll keep him in Dallas at least another year, and they work on a long-term deal. Tyreek Hill is a free agent for the first time after being released this week by the Dolphins. Hill played in only 4 games this past season after dislocating his knee in Week 4. Turns 32 this weekend. And Mike Evans will return for a 13th NFL season in 2026 after an injury-plagued season saw him play a career-low 8 games. Evans currently a free agent and turns 33 in August. I want to go back, though, to George Pickens. RC, how difficult do you think getting a long-term – we ask this about the Cowboys and somebody every year. How challenging is it going to be to get a long-term deal done with Pickens?
I mean, are you going to be able to get Tracy Morgan to stick to the script when he comes on later? Because that's about how difficult I think this is going to be. What I know is this. The Dallas Cowboys are going to franchise George Pickens. But Pickens' agent, David Mulligetta, once famously told me, I'm never taking $9 on 10, and most of the time I want 11. And that's exactly how George Pickens will approach this deal. Not like he's the 1B, not like he's an elite 2, but like he's the #1 wide receiver on this team. And so Jerry will not have the opportunity in this.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back. The NFL offseason is heating up, and the Dallas Cowboys are right in the middle of the action. The combine is next week, and the Cowboys have a full to-do list. Franchise tag George Pickens, start long-term negotiations, and completely overhaul a defense that was historically bad last season. Ryan Clark, Marcus Spears, and the panel are breaking down exactly how this is going to play out, and it might get messy. Let's start with George Pickens. The Cowboys are expected to franchise tag him before the March 3rd deadline, keeping him in Dallas for at least another year while they work on a long-term deal. But as Ryan Clark points out, getting that deal done is going to be anything but easy. Pickens' agent, David Mulligetta, once famously told me, I'm never taking $9 on $10, and most of the time I want 11. And that's exactly how George Pickens will approach this deal. Pickens isn't going to accept being treated as a number 2. He proved this year that he's a #1 receiver. Career highs in catches, yards, and touchdowns. He kept his nose clean, away from the antics we saw in Pittsburgh. He earned the right to be paid like a top-tier wideout. Marcus Spears adds, he boosted his earning potential in a way where he is going to be the #1 receiver for somebody if he's not getting #1 receiver money in Dallas. And rightfully so. The relationship with Dak Prescott is strong. Dak was at the Pro Bowl talking about how they need to get Pickens back. But the money is going to be the sticking point. And with Mulligetta representing him, the Cowboys aren't going to get a discount. This may become a very contentious negotiation, Marcus warns. We know who his agent is, and we know the value of a #1 wide receiver in this modern football. Now, let's talk about the defense. The Cowboys just hired Christian Parker as their new defensive coordinator, replacing Matt Eberflus. Parker comes from the Eagles, where he was passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach. And he inherits a unit that was historically bad. The numbers are staggering. The Cowboys allowed the most points per game in the league this past season, the most they've allowed in any season since 1960, their first year of existence. Third down defense was also the worst in the NFL. There's nowhere to go but up. Parker's introductory comments were exactly what you want to hear from a new coordinator. You want to have your core principles and foundational beliefs, but as you move forward, what do your guys do well? How can you put good players in highlighted positions? How can you create one-on-ones for certain guys? He's talking about tailoring the scheme to the personnel, not forcing players into a system that doesn't fit. That's a huge shift from what we saw under Eberflus. Marcus breaks down what Parker needs to do this offseason. First and foremost, it's about acquiring personnel that can execute the scheme he talked about. It's about building this pass rush. We know what this league is about. It's no coincidence that the teams we saw in the playoffs were getting after the quarterback. He points to Quinnen Williams as a centerpiece, and DeMarvion Overshown as a budding player with potential. But the secondary needs a complete overhaul. And then Marcus drops a bombshell. I think Max Crosby, if in any way they can acquire him, I think that should be on the table. And I think Tariq Woolen should be on the table from Seattle as well. Those are 2 players that would immediately change the identity of this defense. Imagine Max Crosby lining up opposite Quinnen Williams. That's a dominant front that can pressure any quarterback. And Tariq Woolen would give them a lockdown corner to pair with whoever they bring in. Ryan Clark adds, if this team could add Riq Woolen and Max Crosby, the difference in talent of this roster immediately changes and increases. Clark also shares a fascinating insight from a conversation with Jerry Jones. Jerry told him he felt he put the defense in a bad position last year by trying to recreate the defensive genius of his former head coaches. This year, he wanted to go a different direction. He wanted to dive deep into the interviews, and that's why he came up with Christian Parker. He wanted that sort of enthusiasm. He wanted that sort of young energy and also a creative mind. But Clark warns, he's going to have to understand he doesn't have the same pieces that you had in Philadelphia where you could get after the quarterback with 4. You played a very vanilla defense from a secondary and coverage standpoint in Philadelphia. I don't believe you have the roster to do that right now in Dallas. Marcus ties it all together. Brian Schottenheimer's first year as head coach changed the way Jerry thinks about going about a championship. The aggressive nature, the way he put pieces together, the year Dak Prescott had, there's a feeling of reinvigoration around Dallas. Young, enthusiastic, a different way of playing, a different approach. It may pay dividends for them sooner rather than later. What do you think? Will the Cowboys get a long-term deal done with George Pickens? Or will this turn into a contentious standoff? Can Christian Parker fix this defense in one off-season? And should Dallas go all in on Max Crosby? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love NFL off-season drama and hard-hitting debate, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.